The trickster used to cause mischief in western Africa, existing outside the realm of morality while falsely answering villagers' prayers. When these villagers were shackled and dragged across the sea, Eshu-Elegbara did not just stay at home in Africa, he too made the voyage, and grew into something at once African and uniquely American. This is a tale of an American trickster, a Delta spirit and an ambitious soul. Now this trickster has many names yet needs none. Legba, Eshu, Satan. The bayou is full of lore, and everyone and his uncle has seen this devil. In the whispering wind, the fox begging on the corner, even in his neighbor's house. But Robert Johnson's story wasn't just a brush with evil. It's a story of starry eyes and an early grave. It's a story of temptation and the weakness of men and the passions of gods who make freed men into slaves. When Robert Johnson hit the road with 6 strings, his hat, and stars in his eyes, he'd been laughed off stage for the last time. Yes, he'd found Tortoise, the old bluesman, and asked him what to do, and Tortoise told him to go north to where the Southern crossed the dog. Well, Robert knew what that meant. He was going to Clarksdale, Mississippi, home of Mr. W.C. Handy, and he would learn to play his guitar just like he'd always dreamed. Well, Robert reached the crossroads and was just about to call it a night when he saw just up down the road a dog step out into the streetlight. Robert chased him towards the river right up to its owner's feet. And to his left the mighty Mississippi moaned just like the river Styx. In the cold twilight the shadow held out a scroll and hissed. "Hello, Robert," he said, with his tail down between his heels. His dog just gurred. He told him, "Son, we'd like to make a deal." The dog lunged for Robert's guitar and old Bob was awfully scared. But in its jaws that guitar cried like no one had ever heard. "I've seen you play before and your harp there sounds okay, but this guitar won't work for you and we can help you play. Now if you'd like the sound that my dog here just made, you've just to sign on this dotted line and we'll send you on your way." Well, Robert signed it right away. He had to have that sound. When the stranger tossed him in the river and he woke up on the ground beside a note that said, "I'll see you soon and thank you for your help. Now take your strings on back down south." He only signed it L. Now, a week on, back in Beulah with his guitar again, Robert made his way back to the bar and gambling den where he'd been booed out just days before. Well, he marched to the corner and put his guitar on his lap and began to play a song nobody knew, with a style all his own. He picked the high and thumbed the low like a one-man orchestra, and nobody could explain Robert Johnson's sudden talent. Robert Johnson's name spread all through the South, and he traveled around playing juke joints and blues bars from down in the Delta all the way up to Memphis. And while his abilities inspired awe, they also inspired fear. Whispers of shady deals and stolen souls accompanied any mention of the famous Robert Johnson. But one morning he was awoken by a knock, and his Riverside acquaintance opened up the door. Robert looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Hello, Robert," it hissed. "I believe it's time to go." Well, Robert found himself standing outside of Rosedale once again, his shadowy companion facing a long line at the post office. "Well, I told you I'd come calling when I needed your help, and today's election day. Now, the polls are open, but we think Mr. Henry Freeman over there should reconsider his decision to vote. You go fetch the sheriff around the corner and report back to me here." Well, Robert Johnson yelled and was brought to his knees. His legs shrunk and his nose extended, and his shouts became barks. Passerby saw the sheriff chase a dog to the polls, then return with some friends. Henry never made it home. This wasn't the last time it was to happen. Robert knew he had blood on his hands. He'd fallen to his temptations, but wouldn't have knowingly sold his soul to play the blues. Or would he? He sat and gazed out over the Mississippi for hours, the same spot the deal went down, then rose. He walked back to the crossroads and fell down on his knees, pleaded with the Lord above, "Have mercy, save poor Bob, if you please." Now, playing back in Beulah one late summer evening, a defeated-looking Robert Johnson told stories from the road. "You can bury my body down by the highway side," he sang, as if he'd already died, "so my old evil spirit can get a greyhound and a ride." That's when the door hissed open and Robert laid down his guitar. He lit a cigarette at the bar and without looking to the door greeted the new guest. Hello, Satan. I believe it's time to go. His neighbors watched him fall to his knees and listened as his screams turned into howls. They say he growled and barked like a dog before he finally closed his eyes. Robert Johnson watched his body buried at the highway side, but the devil has his soul and poor Robert just can't die. He watched Tortoise sing a sad ancient blues to a crowd who took turns with a shovel. Trouble never goes looking for man, it's man who seeks out trouble. Immortality, the price of his fame, Bob plays as a pawn in the big man's chess game and chases the souls of his own disciples like a dog on a hunt. Robert Johnson is the soul of rock and roll, corrupting every youth who finds an old record player with visions of fame and fortune, sex and drugs. And whenever a kid is converted or picks up a guitar and a slide, you know that Robert and that tricky devil have taken another soul for a ride.